नदीषणाः विद्वांसः संस्कृतिभोः समुपस्थिताः नानाविषयनदीषणाः विद्वांसः संस्कृतानुरागिणश्च अत्र भवतां समेषां स्वागतं व्याहरन्ति मोदिते मे मनः यतो हि विशिष्टोऽयं सम्मेलनं द्विवर्षप्रतीक्षानन्तरं सम्पद्यते बहुकालं प्रतीक्ष्य यत् प्राप्यते तस्य महत्त्वम् अपि अधिकं जायते। अहम् अस्य स्वागतवचसः प्रारम्भे एकं वैदिकं वाक्यम् उद्धर्तुं कामास्मि। तद्यथा आनो भद्राः क्रतवो यन्तु विश्वतः। Let noble thoughts come to us from all directions. This is the underpinning of the World Sanskrit Conference. It is a matter of honor and great pleasure for me to welcome you all to the 18th World Sanskrit Conference being organized under the aegis of the International Association of Sanskrit Studies, Paris, by the Australian National University in Canada.
You're joining from India and some from Australia and all over. I will be uploading my video mostly tomorrow or day after tomorrow. But however, I can give a brief about what I'm trying to do here. See, my PhD is about computational analysis of Bhagavata and its commentaries. So Bhagavad Purana.
Shameless self-promotion. Published translation of Vishnu Purana has a very extensive index, and you can look up Vishnu as X, Vishnu as Y, and I'm sure you'll find Vishnu as Kamadeva in that index as well. Madhava.
Thank you.
So please, questions, observations for any of our participants. May I ask one of Shakuntala? As you know, I'm very interested in Stala Puranas, and I'm also very interested in the contemporary performance of Puranic texts, particularly Bhagavata Purana. Do you have any knowledge of how this Mahatmya is excuse me, is still used, or is it still for sale at pilgrimage places? Does it have a living tradition? Is it recited at tirthas, for example?
About Bhagavata Purana, are you asking this question, right?
Yes.
As we in India, there is definitely a tradition of a Bhagavata Purana recitation. There are Bhagavata Saptahas which are performed.
No, I'm sorry, not Bhagavata Purana, the Gokarna traditions.
Correct. Therefore, I asked, is it about Bhagavata Purana?
Oh, sorry, I misheard.
Yeah. So, Gokarna Purana, the tradition of recitation of this Gokarna Purana is not there, definitely, because the Sthala Purana is very much unexplored. Definitely, the stories are there in the folklores and oral traditions. The people living in Gokarna are aware about the story of Ravana and Ganapati, which is associated with the establishment of the Atmalinga, that is Mahabaleshwara, in Gokarna. But there are no textual references as such. As we know, Gokarna is mentioned in many Puranas. It is there in Ramayana, Mahabharata, and almost all Mahapuranas.
Say that the critical edition of Natyashastra has to be done based on how Abhinavagupta has treated the text, based on Abhinav Bharati. But I consider that is only one critical edition of Natyashastra. Parallelly, we should have an edition which is different from what Abhinavagupta is seeing. This is what I'm trying to argue in my paper. And only one point I have made there is why we see this difference in the order of chapterization according to Abhinavagupta is my argument is while he's invoking invocatory verses in every chapter. So we know that 36 chapters, and for every chapter he writes a Mangala Shloka. While writing the Mangala Shloka, he is invoking the Shaiva Tattva from the Kashmir Shaiva system, and then in that Mangala Shloka itself, he is giving the essence of that particular theatrical content in that particular chapter. Yes, this is what he is doing there. And then what I'm trying to show that Abhinavgupta's approach to Natya Shastra is from the Shaiva perspective of even the ordering of chapters. So according to the order of the tattvas, he puts the order of the chapters. And since he invokes the 37th tattva, which is above Shiva tattva, that is Anuttara, he is having 37 chapters. That is the division he is doing there. And in between the slide I have shown in 7 places how he has divided the chapters of Natya Shastra, which you will not find in the non-Abhinavan edition. So this is from the Abhinavgupta's point of view, and from that perspective, if you're going into critical edition, then that will be the what I'm calling as Abhinava's edition of the Natya Shastra. But there has to be this non-Abhinavan edition, because here also you find we can argue that every chapter which is ordered in this particular way, different from that of Abhinavgupta, also has Adhyaya Sangati. Adhyaya Sangati cannot be the main argument to show that the order of chapters which Abhinavgupta has put down in a particular way, that is what is Natya Shastra. Adhyaya Sangati I can show in the non-Abhinavan edition also. So this is my main argument, and just placing that if an edition is taken up, it has to be a 2-text model Natya Shastra. This is what is my.
Oh, thank you. That's a very nice presentation. It is a pity that we cannot see the PowerPoint. You have mentioned two versions of Natya Shastra. And probably you are aware of the fact that INGCA has edited the Nepali manuscript.
Yes,
that is a non-Abhinav that you have consulted. So you are not fully satisfied with that edition?
No. I have mentioned that
Why?
also in my slide. I have mentioned that in my slide. The point there is in the Nepali version, what they have done is, again, it is the main chapter, critical edition, what is non-Abhinavan edition. The order of chapterization is based on the non-Abhinavan edition. And what is the chapterization of Abhinavan edition? They have put in the footnote.
Okay.
This is the Nepali version, what they have done. But we also have an Abhinavan edition, which is what is the Baroda edition is. So,
okay. Then another question for me, and forum is open for discussion, but I will just finish with my question. So suppose Abhinavgupta has got his own, for his own reasons, for his own Shaiva metaphysical reasons, he had, do you believe that he manipulated the text or rearranged? What exactly would have been the process by means of which we have got these 37 chapters with the final chapter with Anuttara and all the 30? What is your view about that? That is my question, to be precise. Was there a pre-Abhinavgupta version which Abhinavgupta had used? Or does this version begin with Abhinavgupta?
Yeah, this is also what I've argued in this. I have actually written one paper which I've given in that PowerPoint. That is a philosophico-aesthetical dilemma. And I'm analyzing the invocatory verses of the 36 chapters. And I'm trying to say that Abhinavgupta has manipulated the text, both from the Shaiva perspective as well as the theatrical content, that aesthetic perspective, theatrical aesthetic perspective also. He has, I see that he has rearranged the text to suit some idea. Either I'm saying that like this, that either it is a philosophical perspective or his understanding of the theatrical aesthetic perspective of the Natya Shastra, or he himself is editing the text. We all know that he is editing the text because you have other variants coming into it. He's pointing out all the textual variants. Apart from that is only the textual variants, but he is rearranging the content of the Natya Shastra. So what the Abhinav Bharati Natya Shastra is, I believe that cannot be the original within quote, okay, Natya Shastra, but there should be a pre-Abhinavan edition. And I am trying to argue that could this non-Abhinavan edition, which is opposite of Abhinavan edition, could this non-Abhinavan edition be the pre-Abhinavan edition? I have not arrived at the conclusion of that, but I have raised this question in my presentation. So there is a pre-Abhinavan edition, is what I believe.
Maybe you have to look at the contributing inputs probably done by people like Bhattatauda also, who was a teacher of Abhinavagupta. That is also possible. That line also is.
Yes.
So now, Professor Haridath Sharma, maybe you want to ask some question, because we are only 3 here. We have to do justice to the paper, at least. This is World Sanskrit Conference. No, please switch on your mic, Professor. Mic. Your microphone is not working.
Haridath Sharma sir, you have to unmute yourself. Is your mic in mute?
Yeah. For that, there will be a message popping up that you have to activate your microphone in your system.
Yeah.
But it was working. It was working in the beginning. In the beginning, we could hear. So, is there any organizer who could help Professor Haridath Sharma, please? Hello.
Professor Sharma is not on mute at the moment. Professor Sharma, can you hear us?
The other text, probably we could come to a more concrete conclusion, like whether he is really the 84, one of the 84 Mahasiddhas. But I think I just said he is said to be. So this point is still not sure. Yeah, more research should be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I have one more question that is also not so important, but I'm curious about it. So why Kambara's Alokamara are cited so many? So in so many texts? Why it was so popular?
This is also one of the questions that I'm asking myself. Yeah, thank you. This is very, very good question. It is also one of the questions that I'm asking myself, because he is re-quoted by many late Tantric Buddhist authors, and also Shaivas, called Shaiva masters and Jaina masters as well. So this is very unique, I think. And I think one of the reasons why he's quoted, like the Alokamala is quoted by many Buddhist authors, is because probably the text Alokamala was on the curriculum of the monasteries, like the Buddhist monasteries. I think this is very probable. And as for Shaiva and Jaina masters, I'm not really familiar with the Jaina situation, but I think we could safely say that probably the Alokamala was also popular in in Kashmir, like in medieval Kashmir, because we could see that it is cited by masters related to the Spandakarika and also related to Abhinavagupta. So I think, as we all know, in medieval Kashmir, Buddhism kind of interacted with Shaivism a lot. Like the masters probably studied both traditions. Like the Shaiva master the Buddhist texts, probably out of the need to like to argue in debates. But I think it is for sure that they study the text, and also vice versa. Like the Buddhist masters also studied the Shaiva texts, as I've shown in the last slide of my presentation. So that's probably the reasons. There are probably multiple reasons, but I think yeah, these are the ones that I can think of. Thank you.
Thank you. Makomis also chimed in the chat saying Daisy used the phrase stock verses to help explain its popularity.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, yes, I could see that later commentators probably really are citing the verses as stop verses because they cited really the same verses in the same sequence. So I think probably it is a kind of a list which is handed down from tradition to tradition, like from masters to disciples, like in the lineage, and then people kind of argue against or for or whatever they do, like yeah. So this is a kind of a stock Buddhist quotations kind of, I think, in Shaivism, or like probably, I don't know, in Jainism as well.
Thank you. So we can switch back to Yohei Kawajiri's presentation. He had just summarized it, and then, because of these technical difficulties, we switched back to the questions for our first presenter. So I open the floor up. Are there any questions or comments for Yohei? Well, I have one very, very small question, and I'm very much an outsider to the Pratyabhijna philosophy. But at one point in your presentation document, you said that the Vedantic Brahman is devoid of action. And so I realized probably this is referring to later material, which I haven't read very closely, like Shankara's Vedanta. But I'm thinking of, like, in the Upanishads, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the vision of Brahman there, he does take actions. He pursues this female half of himself, and then, mates with her and produces all the animals that make up the world. And so that's this vision of a Brahman with action. So maybe you could elaborate a little bit about the difference between that and this idea of Brahman as devoid of action.
At least Pratyabhijna thinkers regard Brahman as inactive, like Shankara's Brahman. And of course, some Brahman is not so, but at least Pratyabhijna thinkers regard the Brahman as a lower deity, and because that inactive, there's no action. That is a difference between Brahman and Shiva. But in this is the basic idea of the Pratyabhijna philosophy. But in the Ambaya-Dipika, it is interesting that the author of the Ambaya-Dipika regards the Brahman with reflective awareness, which is that Brahman is very active. Almost this is like Shiva for the Pratyabhijna school. So this is the characteristics of the Ambaya-Dipikas. Maybe this is interpretation from the Virashaiva view, but I'm not. Now I'm checking the Virashaiva view. In that sense, I would like to invite some advice or comments from the Virashaiva scholars. But yeah, is it okay?
Yes, that's a fine answer. Thank you. Any more? Are there any other questions or comments for Yohei? Okay, then we can move on to Pongsi, Pang Srivongse. I very much apologize for any of you if I mispronounce your names.
I hope you can all hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, so my presentation is largely drawn from my upcoming DPhil thesis. And the focus of that thesis is the ritual practice and the iconography of the Krama cult in medieval Nepal. And my main textual sources for that are some unpublished liturgical material for the Krama in medieval Nepal, especially the Kalikula Kramarchana, which is one of the most elaborate ritual manuals we have of this cult. And it was written by Vimala Prabodha, who we know to have been the preceptor of the 13th century Newari king Arimala. But the subject of this talk will be focused on the iconography of the vast pantheon of the Krama. And what I attempt to do is, through a close reading of these unpublished texts, to show that there are certain nuances to the iconography, perhaps, of this cult that we've overlooked. The first point of interest that I focus on is the characterization of the 5 Kalis, which I think in secondary literature, we have studies on how they're distinct epistemologically or philosophically, but we have nothing on how they're distinct iconographically. And I attempt to show that their iconographic distinctness is also linked to their cosmic functions, and that this is something that is quite clearly highlighted in the Kalikula Kramarchana, as well as in other tantric literature, showing that there's quite a strong tradition.
Why the biographies of Sharibhadra and Bahubali changed in the medieval period, specifically in the 12th and 13th centuries? So I think 3 factors for this phenomenon. Factor 1 is localization. The Jain literature, the protector of Jain literature was Jain community, and this was in the 11th century in Gujarat, Chalukya dynasty. But this dynasty, this dynasty has ended in the 12th and 13th century. And factor 2, second factor, the qualitative change in patronage, the influence of merchants such as Bastapara and Tenjapara brothers increased about the protection of Jainism. And in Sharibhadra Kakakram, Sharibhadra's role as a merchant is emphasized more than his role as a boy who gave offerings in the Jain old literature. And third factor is differentiation from Krishna and Rama. Jain saint biographies, hagiographies before the 12th century are marked by the influence of the Rama and Krishna stories. The high degree of fusion of the Rama story and the Jain saint biographies had obscured the difference between the Bhakti movement of Krishna faith and Jainism. So Krishna story versus Rajmati Neminat, and Rama story versus Bharata and Bahubali. So the Jain community has selected Neminat Rajmati other than Krishna story, and Bharata and Bahubali story other than Rama story, I think. And thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So I would like now to invite Dr. Mrunali Newalkar, independent scholar. I remind you that this is not really a presentation. We should have read your paper, so just please, if you can briefly just synthesize or say something to introduce your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, thank you. So my topic is Eulogy Redefined, Understanding Sanskrit Artis on the Goddess. Through the paper, I have tried to use 3 different Sanskrit Aratis. Arati is a very typical Hindu way of eulogizing a deity. It's a ritual combined with a particular type of a song, which is sung during the ritual. There is a plate containing a lit lamp, which is rotated in the clockwise direction in front of the deity. The ritual is generally performed as arati. It is performed only for the gods or revered beings, and for humans, it is usually called aukshana, and there is no song accompanying that. There is only the lamp which is rotated in front of the person, usually on birthdays or big celebrations. So Sanskrit Aarti is a very different, very unique phenomena, because we find aartis generally in Marathi, in Maharashtra, as well as several aartis in dialects of Hindi that I have come across. And these aartis are mostly medieval and modern period aartis. Now, when I was studying for some other subjects, I came across some manuscripts that contained aartis in Sanskrit, and these are all.
And my interests are in epics and narratives. The person who is down to look after this session, unfortunately, hasn't been able to make it. So I have been brought in to look after you and to welcome you and to stimulate your conversation. But I'm sorry, I myself will be almost unable to contribute to this, but I will do my best. So I will start. Well, what we have here, we have Rucha, and I think we've lost Rajavi, but very briefly, Rajavi is head of the Department of English at St. Xavier's College in Ahmedabad. Am I right, Rucha?
Sir, Department of Sanskrit, sir.
Department of Sanskrit. Rajavi is in the Department of Sanskrit Studies, is she? At St. Xavier's College, Ahmedabad, and the title of her paper is Gender Matters, Amaru Shatakam and the Male Gaze, co-authored by Rucha, Rucha at St. Xavier's College, also in Ahmedabad. And we also have with us Abhishek Tripathi, who is a PhD student at Sapienza University in Roma, in Italy. The title of Abhishek's paper is Reciprocal Illumination, Theological and Philosophical Projection of Creation of Sexuality and Interpretation of Gender in Hinduism and Jainism. So there are many, many other scholars who are supposed to be presenting in this session, and I don't know where they are. I'm sorry they're not here, but I think together, let us do our best to have a good conversation. And those of you, I can see we have a number of people in the audience also listening in. And so you people online are very actively encouraged. Please ask questions. Please put up your hand. Anything you can do, you're most welcome to contribute. So what I think I would like to do is let's begin with Abhishek. I'm assuming that you folk have seen one another's presentations already. They've been posted for some time now, and that was certainly my intention that you would do so. But what I would like to do is perhaps invite each of you to just give a very brief summary of your presentation now, and then we shall have a discussion. So Abhishek, would you kindly start us off?
Thank you, Professor. So may I know how much time I would be having in the first, this one to summarize? 5 minutes, 2 minutes?
5 minutes, something like
okay.
that. Yeah. 10 minutes if you like. 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
So very good afternoon to all of you and my fellow presenters, and some of them are teachers. My topic of the presentation is basically derived out of actually at one point of time when this conference supposed to happen, I think in 2021. Actually, I was about to do a PhD in this area at that point of time, you know, and that is why I was very intrigued in doing all these things. But right now I'm doing PhD in meditation, but still this area is very close to me, and I have been, you know, trying to understand this actually in Indic religions. So when I was writing this paper, I have gone through literature of both Hinduism and Jainism, and I found very interestingly that there are aspects of gender and sexual identity and interpretation and things like that, if we combine these two religion in an illumination, like there are aspects, biological aspects from both sides, and then textual traditions, and then there are philosophical interpretations, and what was happening in the society when it comes to gender and its interpretation. So then I realize if there is a study combining these two together, the gender issue in the interpretation of gender in Jainism and Hinduism, it gives a comprehensive picture. So the aim of the paper is to see how gender is a very fluid idea, both in Hinduism and Jainism. And as I said, a very comprehensive understanding may emerge if we study these two together, the gender issue and interpretation of gender in these two very prominent Indic religions. And the basis of this was that at least in the Western literature, we found that in the studies of Fukuyama, Ferguson, Yip, and Schnur, that gender and sexual diversity has history of conflict, and most of the time it has a sense of exclusion from the organized religion, and vis-a-vis what is happening when it comes to Hinduism and Jainism. As we know that we found in a paper written by Harvey in 1912, where he talks about some of the characteristics, which I will relate it to, issue. Like Hinduism always had the general animistic or pantheistic tendency. It so a tendency to defy whatever it is. So, and tendency to syncretism. So what helps me to understand when we see these characteristics of Hinduism vis-a-vis gender is that how this fluid nature of gender has been expressed when it comes to Sanskrit literature in Hinduism. Like we see in Shvetashvatara Upanishad, even while defining the non-dual attributes of Brahman, very categorically it says that it is not he or she, and also talks about a gender which is Tritiya Prakriti or neutral gender. And again, in chapter 5 and shloka 10 or verse 10, again when talking about the aspects of Brahman, it talks about it's not woman, it's not women, nor it is neuter. So you could see the sense and the explications of third gender very much visible here. And then when it comes to
semantic approach to the analysis of compounds, and he when we talk about a Brahmana, he says that basically what happens is nivrita padarthaka, so the word loses its meaning, and this is how we arrive at the understanding of what a negative compound is. Now, what's interesting later on is that grammarians say that we know what the meaning of a compound is, but what we need to see, so we get there. We know what it means. We want to know how we got there. What is the procedure? And this is what I was analyzing, and they. To do that, they refer to the notion of secondary meanings, of metaphors, and later on, especially from the texts of Kayata and Helaraja, they refer to superimposition. So they think that the way we understand negative compounds, it's because we superimpose one notion on another. In the case of a Brahmana, we can do it in two ways. We can superimpose the notion of a Brahmana on a Kshatriya, or sometimes we can impose the notion of a whole on some parts. So imagine we have a Brahmana that is we have a person that is lacking some features. So we can a Brahmana that does not behave properly. Then we can say that he's a Brahmana, he's a bad Brahmin. because but we assume he's a Brahmin, right? So that was this notion of superimposition is appearing later on within the school of grammarians, but it all stems from a mistake. So when we use negative compounds, we do that because we need to correct a mistake that was done in the first place. Okay, so what I kind of noticed is that the whole procedure, and in analyzing 9 samasas, which are to a large extent they are supposed to be paryudasa pratishedha. Now, of course, I don't think it's always the case, but this is the majority of cases probably, is that the procedure has few steps. So we have the mistake step that is sort of step 1, and then this mistake leads to the imposition of one notion on another, depending on our understanding. But there is the level of superimposition, and this superimposition is then corrected. In this case, well, it's denied, so it's a 2 or even 3-tier process. And now this actually, when we look at that, it's very similar to how we understand prasadya, pratishedha. Yeah? When we first establish a statement, establish a rule, establish a procedure, and then further we negate it. So that was my paper was about.
Okay. Thank you, Malgorzata. Now I invite Sharon as well as Deepesh to comment, ask questions on this paper.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yes, Sharon.
Sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't have so many comments about this. It was quite interesting to read it. The only thing is that we don't know what Panini was thinking about this, yes? Yeah, I think you mentioned it also in your paper somewhere.
Yes, and I actually think that that a lot of those discussions later on, we don't know. The only thing I think what we can say about Panini's approach is that he was focused on technicality. So how morphologically a compound behaves, and that's all we know. I think that all the further discussion and all the problems they find and they discuss, it's all on Patanjali, because Patanjali decided to say, okay, so let's go semantically about this. Let's see which notion is primary. Is it Uttara Padartha Pradhanya? Is it the Brahmana that is primary? Is it negation that is primary? And very often they actually, what they say is that it doesn't really matter. So we can because they are very particular compounds, it's this. So what they are saying is that we can morphologically we cannot probably justify all the options, but semantically we can understand them the way we want. This is what Kayata says. Yeah, it's just it's just the easiest way out. We are looking for the least complicated solution, basically. But we don't know what Panini thought. No.
Yeah. The only thing is that Prasadya, Pratishedha, and Paryudasa, this is very important for interpreting Panini's sutras. So I don't know if someone did, because as you know, some commentators for solving some problems, difficulties in the Ashtadhyayi, they say, oh, this is here a Paryudasa, and this is how it doesn't include this kind of problems. So I don't know if someone did any research about the all Ashtadhyayis, where it's supposed to be Paryudasa or Prasadya. Then maybe we can understand how, but I don't think it's possible even to know what Panini was thinking about this. Anyway,
I think some was done research, but yes, that would be yeah, again, that's later interpretation. I agree. So
Yes.
Yeah. So I would first of all welcome the two other scholars who have joined. Rohan Kulkarni, can you please switch on your video? And also Dr. Shozu Miyazaki. Welcome to this session. I hope I'm audible to all of you. And you are able to...
It seems I have some technical problem, but finally I joined. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for joining. And we are 7 people, and we have decided that each can have 10 minutes for discussion. And I am requesting each one of you to sum up what you have presented in 3-4 minutes max, and then we can take it forward. So the first paper we have started discussing is that of Dr. Malgorzata Suljic-Cowley on the role of mistakes, impositions, and metaphors in understanding Sanskrit negative compounds. So in her paper, she has presented a particular scheme as to how, according to the grammatical tradition, the negative compounds get understood. So I have a few questions and some clarifications also, but I would also request Rohan, who is also very well trained in the traditional manner, to comment. So as far as the tradition goes, the Paryodasa way of explanation of the negative marker is always done with reference to a compound, right? And the Prasajya Pratisheta is always done with reference to a verb in the sentence. However, there are some exceptions, and we know those exceptions. Patanjali has noted them down. Even Panini has mentioned 2 such cases. One of them is very clear, Asuryam Lalatayoho Drashitapoho, where the forms Asuryam Pashaha is derived and so on. But I have a couple of questions to you, Malgorzata. First question is, when do we know that there is a mistake that is committed? How do we know that there is a mistake?
I don't know. Well, I think, well, what Patanjali says is that, well, I don't know if we know, actually. We just, the examples that Patanjali gives is that, for example, someone tells us that we should, the typical example, abrahmanam anaya, and they tell us that we should go to a different place, and this is a place where Brahmins live, and we should bring a Brahmin. So we go there, and we assume that the person we are bringing is a Brahmin because we were instructed that in that particular region, this is the region for Brahmins to live. So we bring a person with the best intentions of bringing a Brahmin, but it turns out that he is not one.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions for Claire? I have just one other comment, Claire, which is the second part, which is the discussion of the etymology of the words. In that case, if you're going to go on to publish it, you might want to, I think you relied mostly on the old Pali text Sadi dictionary. You might like to look at Margaret Cohn's new dictionary, which at least covers the first 2 words. The first 2 words. The Critical Pali Dictionary covers the first word. And I think Edgerton's Hybrid Sanskrit Dictionary. I mean, you picked up some of those alternative interpretations from the commentary. So, for example, the first word, Ujjayanti, you have the prefix might not be ud, but ava, and so on. Anyway, that was just a comment.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Claire. That was very interesting. Perhaps we'll have questions posted. Actually, sorry, Chris Clark has a question. So I have a minor comment, which I hope has helped you to research. It does appear that Vipacenti is found outside the Vinaya, namely 10 times in the why can't I go down further? In the Samyutta Nikaya.
Yes, but actually I looked at this and I know for sure it's 10 times in the stock phrase.
Yeah.
So thank you for this, and thank you for checking it as well. It shows like a quick skill of looking up words. But from as far as I can remember, it occurs 10 times within, and it's abbreviated in the digital edition. But it's, if you reconstruct it, it's actually within the stock phrase.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Chris. For some reason, I only could see the sort of 3/4 of your question. I couldn't scroll down, but hopefully I captured most of it, Chris. So perhaps we can return to that. So our third speaker is Ian McCrabb from the University of Sydney, and his topic is a digital repatriation project. Ian, please.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to present. I'm afraid my paper, my offering seems a little ill-suited to this panel and probably incompatible with the format, actually. My presentation was if anybody saw the video, was on digital tools, methods, and processes. So really doesn't suit this sort of format. But never mind. What I'll do is just give a 2-minute précis of what it was about. So we have a digital repatriation project which commenced in 2021 with the establishment of a consortium of organisations engaged in the study of Gandhari manuscripts and inscriptions. The project and the consortium is currently being extended to institutions with collections of Gandharan texts and artefacts, to museums and galleries. Digital repatriation aims to expand engagement with these culturally significant items, which have largely been limited to research specialists so far. The project uses open source technologies to make these items and the scholarly knowledge associated with them accessible to general academic and interest communities, so outside of super specialists. The strategy is comprised of 3 integrated frameworks.
Japanese. I think the others have also connection trouble, so we are waiting for them coming. But we start now. So now introduction. The panel. Yes, thank you. This is my slide. The panel is about Maitrani Sanhita. Maitrani Sanhita is the 3rd oldest literature in ancient India, following the Rig Veda and Atharva Veda, and includes the oldest literary explanation. In 1879, von Schroeder propagated the existence of this text and its position in Vedic school. And since he published the first edition in 1881, more than 140 years have passed. During this interval, there have been several studies on the Maitrani Sanhita. For example, Sartavalekkar's edition, Dharmadikari's overview of the entire Maitrani Sanhita, Amit Vede's text critical notes, and the Amano's translation of the first and the second book, and several literature studies that were brought by modern scholars of Vedic literature, including our panel members. The Taittiriya Sanhita, which also belongs to the Black Yajurveda, has been utilized for Vedic studies owing to Keith's translation in 1914. In comparison with the Taittiriya Sanhita and also with Shatapatha Brahmana, with Egeling's translation, the MS Maitrani Sanhita had been less utilized for studies. However, in recent years, the situation has changed significantly, and the study of the Maitrani Sanhita is now entering a new phase. That is a good timing to organize a panel about this text. So we are 6 members who study the Maitrani Sanhita from view of Vedic literature, linguistic, and cultural history, so on. Dr. Duperon, Dr. Izawa, Professor Kulkarni, Professor Nishimura, and Professor Svennen and me. We organize this session among the panel members, discussion among panel members. Each author will summarize the paper shortly, and one of us will comment on the paper and ask a question, and one author will and the author will respond. So we have 8 to 10 minutes for each paper. And to the questions given in Q&A box, we try to answer during the session in the chat box. We have 6 papers, and I classified them into 2 topics. One in the relationship among the Yajurvedic schools, that are Kataka Sanhita, Kapishra Kata Sanhita, Taittiriya Sanhita, and Brahmana, and Vajasani Sanhita, and Shatapatha Brahmana. Each author examines the relationship among the schools at different ritual. Amano studies on the praesia of Apri hymn at animal sacrifice. Professor Nishimura studies on the Darshapurnamasa. Dr. Duperon on the Yajamana Brahmana, the mantras by the sacrificer. Dr. Izawa on the Agni Chayana, the ritual of piling fire altar. The other topic is the relation to the Rig Veda. Professor Kulkarni and Professor Svennen examine the quotation and influence from the Rig Veda in the innovation of the Maitrayani Sanhita. So now we start the session with the first paper, that's my paper. The commentator is Nirmala Kulkarni. She's not coming, but I start with my paper, short introduction. So my paper is about the Apri hymn at animal sacrifice in the Maitrayani Sanhita and other Vedic texts. At the beginning, I summarize new perspectives provided in my recent studies to add to the major promise that has been assumed, that are the Rig Veda and the Atharva Veda precedes the mantras are older than the Brahmana parts, and the Maitrayani Sanhita stands in close relationship to the Kataka Sanhita. And chronologically, the MS is older than KS, etc. To the first one, I want to add the followings. MS seems to have not known the completed books of the Rig Veda and Atharva Veda in the oldest layers of the Maitrayani Sanhita, and how familiar the MS was with the Rig Veda and Atharva Veda is different according to ritual and chapter. To the premise, the mantras are older than the Brahmana parts. I would like to add there are new mantras in the mantra chapters as well as the Brahmana chapters. The mantras are not always older than the Brahmana. That is the second point. The third point, C, the last premise, MS is close to KS, and MS is older than KS, etc. I would say a simple relative chronology for the entire text, like MS is older than KS, is not relevant. The relationship between the schools and the text has been always changing. I hypothetically established 3 periods for composition. In period 1, MS and KS started to be edited. In the period 2, MS, KS, TS developed ritual exchanging with each other, and KS was going close to TS. In the period 3, all schools add new chapters. So now the main topic of my paper.
I should evaluate, perhaps criticize what you say. This also has to do with another unfortunate aspect of this panel, which is divided, as you know, over 3 sessions. I do this with 2 colleagues of mine, with Professor Jha and Professor Patel, and when it comes to such literary topics, they are the experts, not me. So it's unfortunate that because of time constraints of the others, they could not be here today to moderate this session. This is a shortcoming of mine for which I immediately wish to apologize. Do not expect too much from me in this regard. Now, again, going to the themes that were discussed in the various presentations. Already I mentioned that there's a wide diversity, which is unavoidable in a panel like this. And I'm trying to look for something common, something in all these presentations which could be a common base for a discussion here in this session. And I'm thinking mainly about matters of contextualization, by which I mean all these authors whom you have discussed in your various presentations. Who are they? What kind of people are they? Under what circumstances do they live? What is their educational background? How did they learn Sanskrit to begin with? We all know Sanskrit, beautiful language. I love it too. The number of people who read Sanskrit is limited. Not just anyone can read something that is written today in Sanskrit. So one very pertinent question, I believe, in a panel like this is, who are these people? Why should they write Sanskrit at all? Why don't they write in some other language? Related to this is the question of publishing. Somebody writes something in Sanskrit. Then what happens? People should know that it exists. So the work should be published. Publishing means there is a person who publishes it, a publisher. Who are the publishers? It's a related question. Who are these people who are so interested in these modern Sanskrit writings that they decide to invest money and engage a printer to bring out a book? Another related question is that of the audience. That I am a Sanskrit author and I write something. Whom do I have in mind as a reader or a listener or a spectator in the case of a drama? I'm just giving to you a few examples of questions which I think are relevant for this panel. Another question I would suggest is, to what extent is contemporary modern Sanskrit really as supra-regional a language as we would like to imagine that it is? A few of you in the presentations have emphasized this aspect. That Sanskrit is a pan-Indian language, or it's a universal language. Is that really true? I'm thinking, for instance, of a workshop which I attended many years ago when I was still living in Mysore. It was a pan-Indian philosophical congress. People from all over India came to Mysore to speak about matters that were originally presented in Sanskrit. They were talking about old philosophical authors. I remember one speaker from Bengal, originally from Bengal, more concretely, Bimal Krishna Motilal, who was teaching in Oxford. He came to Mysore. He spoke about Bhartrhari, which in his pronunciation became Bhartrihari. And this was just the beginning of a few problems when he quoted from the works of Bhartrihari. And I saw people sitting next to me in the audience, participants from Maharashtra, from Andhra Pradesh. And they were looking at each other. What's he talking about? Did you understand what he was saying? So already on the level of pronunciation, we have regionalistic difficulties. I can imagine, and I do not know, this is one question that I would like to hear from you, the experts. To what extent do we have regional fragmentation in modern Sanskrit? This could be a problem if, for instance, there is an author living in Bengal. He writes in what he thinks is standard Sanskrit, but maybe that idea is wrong. Maybe in the meantime, and in the meantime, I mean over the past few centuries, something like a regional variety of Bengali Sanskrit developed, which may not be entirely in all detail understandable for a scholar from Kerala or Gujarat. Could it be that we have in Sanskrit something like a regional fragmentation, like we have in Latin in Europe, where there are today specialists in medieval Latin? They can look at a text from the 15th or 13th century, and immediately they can say, this text was written in Sweden, or in Spain, or in Germany, because that language has certain peculiarities which are found only in Germany and not in Spain or elsewhere. To what extent is this the case with contemporary Sanskrit? And to what extent could this be